Hey everybody, welcome to Piloting Church. Yes, you see it on your screen, Piloting Church. There's an airplane window. I did not take that photo, but that's what we're doing. We're piloting the church with Reverend Cameron Trimble and me, Reverend Jim Keats. So welcome to the first episode. Now you might be thinking, wait a minute, I've seen this kind of thing before from the Center for Progressive Renewal. Isn't it called CPR Live? Well, it used to be. We're renaming, rebranding, relaunching, retaking off again. What's the better word for launching in pilot language?
We're taking off.
We're taking off.
Yes. On a new trip.
Right. Yeah. We have a new destination. Our tickets we've been upgraded to business class for Piloting Church. I'm Reverend Jim Keats. This fantastic individual next to me is Reverend Cameron Trimble. Welcome to Piloting Church. Hey Cameron, how you doing this morning?
Really good to see you.
Thank you. So, okay, this question is nuanced and maybe has a couple answers, so I'll just throw it out there. What is Piloting Church?
So it is the combination of the weirdness of my life, actually. It is that I am both a pastor and a pilot. And so I wrote this book because I actually want any excuse in the world to talk about aviation. And I'm also really passionate about what we're up to in the Christian, and particularly the progressive Christian movement in the United States and in Canada, in North America, I should say. So this book is actually the culmination of my work over many, many, many years of working with hundreds of congregations all across North America in trying to reimagine their future, because it's not actually about renewal anymore, I don't think. I think it's actually about, like, how are we going to architect a kind of future where we have really good, healthy spiritual expressions in the world, and where we're really good, healthy humans doing community together. And so I wrote this trying to help congregations kind of find their way.
I love it. I love that it is an international flight. It is going to the entire continental North America, whatever areas. Maybe we'll get it to Europe one of these days too. Your book tour might take you there, who knows. And even just the metaphor and how, where are we going to new places, to new destinations, new flight paths, and things we can learn along the way. And yes, I'm totally on board with, you love this thing, you do this thing, let's put them together. Piloting Church.
Well, it is amazing how the discipline that you have to learn as a pilot actually is a really good additive to being a leader in a congregation. And then the other fun part of writing this book was, because I'm a woman and a pilot and a church consultant, which all of those are kind of weird and rare.
Being a woman is weird? Is that what you just said?
They're super weird. So, like, women make up 4%. I mean, wow. Some statistics, maybe 3% in all of aviation on the whole. So when I was writing this book, I was very intentional about featuring women who were pilots and telling their story, because actually there have been amazing and remarkable women who have contributed to aviation, but their contribution was really about leadership. It was about vision, and it was about being driven and courageous and brave, and all of the things that we really desperately need in church right now. And I'm happy to say are the things that we've just elected to the House of Representatives, and the women that we've just put into that space. Women belong in the House, Jim.
Yes, that was just on the screen. There it is. Women belong in the cockpit. Women belong in the House of Representatives.
Right.
So, okay, we're going to jump on that plane in a second. So Piloting Church is a book, but Piloting Church is also this thing that's happening right now.
Right.
What is this Piloting Church thing? What are we doing, Cameron, in this actual moment? What's happening? What Piloting Church? It's a show. It's a Facebook Live thing, right?
That's right. So you and I have no lives. And so we thought, well, let's find other people in the world who have no lives, but who really want to talk about leadership and want to talk about what is the leadership capacity needed right now in the faith space in particular. But then how does that impact our world? Because if it doesn't do that, sorry, I've got a call coming through. That's annoying. If it doesn't do that, it's irrelevant, right? So, and that's, I think, one of the challenges facing us as spiritual leaders in this context is like, what is the point? What is the relevance? So there's a certain kind of bravery that's needed right now, and a certain kind of leadership instinct, and a new kind of set of muscles, if you will. Because the other thing I'll end up talking about on this, I'm certain, is my obsession with CrossFit and jujitsu and like all the things that you do in midlife where you kind of are having that whole crisis thing. So that's really what we're going to talk about over the mini episodes that we've got coming up.
I mean, I feel like there's 52 weeks in a year, so we're probably going to do, roughly that, right? We'll just go, and every Monday-ish, we'll be on Facebook, talking about the church, leadership, creativity, what's going on in the world, where do those flight paths intersect. I'm going to make it my goal to use as many airplane metaphors as possible, just because I feel like when else am I going to have that excuse? So prepare.
It's annoying. I know. I do the
seatbelt because those are coming.
Right. Well, the other fun thing I think that we've got lined up is it's not just going to be the two of us having these weird random moments, but we've got a number of national leaders and local leaders that we want to talk to who have a proven track record, who've been trying new experiments, and who have instincts that I think we can all learn from. So that those folks will get to join us as we roll these episodes out.
We've got so many things cooking, but for today, you kind of touched on it already. I want us just to chat briefly, at least. 4% of pilots, you said, are women. And we've just had this moment in our country where we've seen the largest percentage of women elected into Congress. Thanks be to God. And we can both look around the churches in our continent and see pulpits that are still predominantly filled by men. The demographics are shifting, and that's wonderful to look historically, but we're by no means there yet. What happens when we see all of these things? We see, your world of piloting, our shared world of politics, and this funky world of the church. And how does the role of women in leadership play into all those things? I'm sure you've got an opinion or two, given that you are a woman, a pastor,
I do.
It's
a slightly complicated story, actually, because in what we've just done in the House of Representatives, which is enormous and we should celebrate the heck out of this moment. I mean, I feel like I can breathe again for the first time in a couple of years, frankly. And we have to be relentless and continuing to support the people that we've elected, and continuing to advocate for a more just and generous world through their work in the world. So their leadership has the potential to really be a game changer in a lot of positive ways. Yeah. Likewise, women going into aviation right now, and many of you have probably heard about, there's going to be this huge pilot shortage that's actually already begun, but we're over the next 5+ years, a huge percentage of our existing pilots are entering into the forced retirement age of 65. So particularly in commercial aviation, we're going to see a sort of a wave of retirements, and we don't have a lot of people coming up through the ranks. But I am really pleased to say there are more and more women who are coming up whose contribution is yet to be realized, right? So we don't know yet how that's going to play out and the impact it'll have on that industry in the whole. Yeah. But what's really interesting in church is that, like, for the first time ever in my denomination's or my tribe's history, the majority of clergy are women.
Yeah.
Now, that is both good, and it's a symptom. And it's a symptom of a system that is in a deconstruction mode, which has its own interesting opportunities in it. But in the midst of that deconstruction, what it means is that the majority of positions, not the majority, but a huge number of positions open, pay half-time or 3/4 time, or, and so these are positions that are more and more filled by women out of necessity, because it's a cultural byproduct of kind of our gendered roles, et cetera. So while I'm hoping that in House of Representatives or in aviation, et cetera, what we're seeing is an equality moving up. I think so true. It's also true in some parts of the church, we see this equality, but we have to be honest to say that part of the reason that women are filling the ranks of ministry in such great numbers is in fact because many of the positions that are available out there are not full-time positions. And a lot of guys just can't take those or don't want to.
That so your vantage point, airplane metaphor, gives such a insightful perspective, a great observation. I mean, on one hand, we can celebrate there are more women in pulpits, more women leading churches, yay! But then we say, what is the compensation they are accepting for that, or what is the cost it takes on them? And it's not just that we're getting women in churches, like you said, women are the ones who are stepping into these roles that are needed, and a man's like, I'm not, you don't pay me enough. And that's where it gets completely ludicrous, and we need to move.
Well, you know that saying, you know, systems are designed to, or systems produce what they're designed to produce.
Yeah.
To some extent. So let's take the aviation field. Like, one of the reasons that we've got a upcoming pilot shortage is that many years ago, we passed a rule that said to become a commercial pilot, you have to have 1,500, a minimum of 1,500 flight hours before you can even be considered in commercial pilot space. Now, that happened as, I think, sort of a knee-jerk reaction. Other pilots may disagree with me. Out of a plane crash that happened with two fairly inexperienced pilots that were flying at that point, but they were undertrained, right? So we passed this regulation. Well, this regulation then makes it almost impossible for the vast majority of people, women or men, to access a commercial piloting career because we passed this rule, right? So we create a condition and a system that leads to a certain outcome. Likewise in the church, and I think one of the things I'm trying to raise in piloting church is, what are the systems that we're creating and what are the outcomes that we're seeing? And then what are the changes that we want to put in place if we're not seeing the kinds of outcomes that we'd hoped for?
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I say often that I think the church's best days are ahead, but I don't mean that as like that's not a cliche for me, but it's also not a guarantee. I mean, I think that's true because I'm banking on leaders of integrity and of courage and of bravery finding new ways to contribute to the spiritual growth of our nation and of our entire world, frankly, in ways we haven't seen before. I don't mean to say, by saying I think our church's best days are ahead, that we're going to have a bunch of churches on every corner and we're going to, you know, have all of the institutional trappings that we've had, you know, for years and years and years.
Our church's best days are ahead doesn't mean it's going to look like it did back in picture decade. I mean, right. Similar, that's what the parallel, I think, to what we've seen right now in the House of Representatives, specifically in all of Congress. I mean, I think I can say, looking at this current subset of Congress, given all of my biases and leanings and whatnot, our country's best days are ahead because I'm seeing a different representation present. When I look at the picture of the new Congress, it looks much more like America than any other picture has looked like in my lifetime when I see who's representing us. And that means to me, okay, our best days ahead aren't just going to be, let's go back to some mythical greatness in the past. Let's find where we're moving, where we're flying towards in the future. It's going to be maybe a new destination. And the pilots are going to look a little bit different than they've looked in the past. And that's a good thing to get us to that new future. Right. If we just fill the roster with the same old people, we're probably going to get to the same old place and have the same old problems. So we totally need to fill the seats and change the system appropriately so to find those best days ahead for the country, for the church, for our lives.
And here's the challenge, one of the challenges that's before us. So when we think about the progressive movement, and I'm going to use that word because today I think if you don't hate women, if you care about the environment, and if you think that we should welcome people, you know, and not just be jerks and lock them up at the border, that actually makes you a progressive. Like, I'm not sure there's a lot of middle ground left anymore. The challenge of one of the challenges of the progressive movement is that because we hold such diversity in our being, and it's such a core value of who we are, that we're way more comfortable talking about who we're not than who we are. And I think in this kind of world, being able to form a shared common identity and then a shared common agenda is going to be the great challenge of the progressive movement. Because what we tend to do is we'll unite and we'll rally until my ism doesn't totally align with your ism. And then we can end up cannibalizing each other within our own movement. And so that's going to be the big challenge.
Denominations came to be. I disagree with that one subtle point. Therefore, we're starting a whole new movement.
That's right. Exactly right. So, but I do think in this world, which is moving so quickly and is increasingly complex in the many systems and layers and technologies that we have available to us, failure to create aligned agendas and failure to generate currencies of trust between us that we can count on and depend on over time to get work done in the world means that we're actually just going to continue to kind of devolve, I think, as a culture. There's a real danger, and I think it's a real opportunity for people who would claim the title spiritual leaders in this context, because now more than ever we need wise ones who have a different kind of perspective or fly at a different altitude, Jim, who can see the ways that things are already in relationship with each other, but they may be unconscious to us, but may give us opportunities for leading us forward.
Absolutely. I love this so much. This gives me hope, just both in being able to say, yes, we will celebrate that we are seeing an increased diversity in all these positions of leadership, specifically seeing a gender diversity present. But that's not, that alone isn't the end of it all. It's still saying, okay, that's happening because of these things. These positions are available in this capacity in the church, so women are the ones who are stepping up. Women always are the ones who seem to step up and make the church keep floating, by the way. So let's just say thank you to that, and now let's pay them what they're worth. But my hope is that this at least gives the visual empowerment for generations behind to say, oh yeah, I can have that job. I can do that. I wear a hijab and I can be elected into Congress. I am not a man and I can also go in the pulpit and preach. That narrative alone, I think, is going to empower even the youngest of our generations in ways that we haven't seen in the past. My favorite example of that is one of my good friends, Amy, is a UCC pastor up in Boston. Her husband's also a pastor, but they both co-lead this retreat center. He spends most of his time doing that. And then she's also the pastor of a UCC church. And at one point, their son, he was like 3 years old at the time, after growing up seeing his mom, Amy, lead worship and preach week after week after week, he goes, "Mom, can boys be pastors too?" And it's like, yes, they can. But that's the question. He was wondering, could I be a pastor? I'm a boy. And I just love living in a world where we are modeling something different, and it will empower future generations to realize, no, it's not even a glass. We have just taken the roof off and there is no ceiling, glass or otherwise. Let's just all start flying these planes. And then let's start working on those systemic issues to make sure everyone is compensated and supported for their work along the way. So easy stuff, right?
Amen to that. I'm a big fan.
So, okay, each week we're going to talk about stuff like this. The church, what's happening in the world. I mean, you've written a whole book on this stuff, so we're going to talk about stuff in here. It's going to be fantastic. Now, when we're not just talking about these ideas, CPR, the Center for Progressive Renewal, and Convergence, we're creating resources and platforms and spaces and cohorts for people to learn and do this stuff. What is the thing that's like just burning in your mind that CPR and Convergence is doing that everyone needs to know about to learn more about all of this conversation we're having?
Well, conversation is the right word, because I think we've moved, we're 10 years old at this point, which is actually shocking to realize. When 10 years ago, when organizations like ours were coming into being, what people were really looking for was sort of the resident expert to come in and make diagnoses. And I think that good work happened during those years. I mean, I think there's a role for that. Today, though, I think our capacity to create and hold space for conversation, where you and I and all these wonderful people who are experiencing, religious life today, or just maybe life today, can share instincts and insights, is more valuable to us than probably ever before in human history.
Yeah.
So we do that a lot of different ways, and we still have traditional titles, but the reason I want to kind of explain it is, so we have consulting, we have coaching, we have online courses, etc. But the pedagogy behind it has shifted.
Yeah.
So instead of this sort of plug and play approach, which I don't think we ever really did, or this, pay the expert to come in kind of thing. We don't do that anymore because it has diminished returns. What we really do, we're committed to creating are environments where we can learn deeply, regardless of whatever tool it is or whatever framework we're using to come together. So whether it's consulting in your congregation, or if it's coaching, or if it's writing a book and then having conversations about it, if it's even speaking on a stage and then having conversation or workshops that break from that, or design sessions, all these different things that we do in the world. The underlying value and goal of them is, hey, let's come together for deep, valuable, structured conversation that architects the kind of future that we hope to see as colleagues and people of faith in this movement.
That's what we're doing.
Right.
Let's creating spaces, physical, virtual, and have these conversations so we can all be empowered to do the work that we are called to do. I mean, that counts whether you are vocationally called into ministry as a faith leader, or you are just that person who shows up at every meeting and you have this itch you want to keep scratching. I call that a call too. So let's just ordain that person as well and say, fly the plane. Let's start talking.
Call that a fungus, but you go for it.
So there's a handful of ways that people can access some of these conversations digitally here at the Center for Progressive Renewal. We just today launched our 2019 webinar series. This is a free webinar series every week, along with this episode happening right now on the Facebook. You can access a new video as a part of our free webinar series that we're launching. And you just have to go to the link that's in the profile down there. It's like teachable.progressiverenewal.com/CPR webinar series. Just click the link, it's easier. And then you're in, you just hit register and it's $0, it's free. And there's a video up today. It's a 30-minute conversation I had with Reverend Jackie Lewis, who is the senior minister of Middle Collegiate Church, talking about preaching social justice.
So good. Oh,
I know, and it's there. You just gotta click it and watch it, and then it's
amazing.
Done. So every week we're going to be resources like that. We have other resources, other online learning spaces. We do things like the Convergence Leadership Project. There's all sorts of stuff. We are a never-ending rabbit hole of opportunities, and it all points towards space for conversation and support and empowerment of one another for the work we're doing in the world. Because believe it or not, there is no coach in this plane. We are all pilots. That could get a little confusing, I suppose. Too many cooks.
That actually could get a little terrifying, couldn't it? But let me just say one thing about this, because this is important. You just mentioned the Convergence Leadership Project, and I want to highlight that for just a second, because we've talked about, particularly with our work through Convergence, that we're trying to contribute to a growing progressive faith movement. And one of the challenges of moving from institutional life to movement life is, or moving from organized religion to organizing religion, is that it requires a different posture in the world as a leader, and it requires a different set of skills. And what we realized in networking hundreds of congregations together and working in all of these different justice projects and, getting to know all these great people is when you're trying to create a new kind of space, you have to have some sort of ethos shaping event, if you will, or experience. So a lot like when you join a congregation, a lot of congregations still have these things called membership classes, or they may call it something cooler than that, but that's really what it is. So it's like hey, I want to be part of this thing that you all are doing together, and I kind of need to understand what you're up to, what the values are that drive it, and how do I contribute to it. So the Convergence Leadership Project is actually like the membership class that we're trying to prototype or test right now, that's really coming out of the instincts of Brian McLaren and of Jackie Lewis and of a lot of great national and international faith leaders right now who are saying, okay, hey, you guys, if we're going to do this progressive movement thing, we've got to have sort of a new way of imagining ourselves in it as congregations contributing. And so this is a multi-year process for congregations to go through that help congregations sort of develop this movement mentality. So I'm a huge fan of it. I mean, obviously I'm biased because it's coming through our organization, but I really think this matters, and I am relentlessly passionate about getting as many congregations as we can involved, because it could reshape denominational life or whatever follows it going forward.
Well, it allows denominations to not be like these rigid barriers that block us off from one another.
That's right.
It allows them to be these open doors and highways that connect us to one another and realize our commonality and our shared work and the conversations we share and need to share to support one another. Suddenly our denominations aren't just a pep rally to get teenagers excited about being Lutheran again. It's saying, no, we're all doing something big in the world, and it's only going to happen when we come together to do it. And we need that sense of common language or even common orientation to know which direction are we going. It's a compass more than a map. Run this way, and
yes,
we're together.
Well, and what's great is that like you want to get really pepped up about being Lutheran, and it's because you're part of this larger thing.
Yeah.
Because you get to, be with the Episcopalians and the Presbyterians, but also the evangelicals and the Catholics and the, and then interfaith, that'll be a whole nother episode. But so anyway.
Okay, Cameron, we could probably talk about this for hours, which is why we're just going to do this every single week. So let's land the plane for this week, and every episode will end with two things happening. First, you will tell us something about airplanes. So if for no other reason you should watch this show,
all right,
then hear Cameron teach you about airplanes. So
there's so many things that I want to cover. This is going to be the highlight of this for me. Okay, so I want to turn like all of us into little pilots, except maybe with a little more training. So look, I have a plane.
Of course.
I've actually just ordered another plane for us for this exercise. But so the way that planes fly is that there are actually four forces that are acting on a plane at any given moment. Okay, so you've got lift, which happens because the airplane is traveling through the air and the air goes over the airfoils right here, your wings, and it creates lift underneath the wings, which is actually what helps the plane go up, right? And then you've got gravity, which is always acting. So it's the thing that pulls us down, and then you've got thrust, which is actually what's pushing the plane forward. So you go through the air. Right. And then you've got drag. And that's the thing that actually it creates friction on your plane surfaces, for example, create drag as you're flying through the air. Now, this is literally called the fundamentals of flight. So it's one of the first lessons that you learn in flying. So as I began to think about this, I thought, my gosh, what a great way of thinking about doing church, because what I really think is happening with all of us is we've got vision lifting us, we've got mission driving us forward, ideally. We've got nostalgia that's creating drag for us.
That was a very nice way of saying it.
Yes. And then we've got sustainability challenges that create the gravity pull that can keep us grounded if we can't figure out these sustainability challenges. And by that, I mean, not just financial sustainability, but again, what are we going to do with these systems? How will we rewire and reimagine those? So as we're thinking about leadership and how we want to architect this future, let's think about the four fundamentals of flight as we're going forward: vision, mission, nostalgia, and sustainability.
You just took this whole Cameron teach us about airplanes part and made it literally a sermon. It's not just I thought I was going to walk away just learning about airplanes, but now I actually learned about the church too. Cameron, it's like you wrote a book on this.
So annoying.
Okay, that was literally my favorite part of this episode so far, minus everything else we just said. And I cannot wait every single week to learn how to become a pilot and a pastor by these examples. But if that wasn't enough, you also wrote a book. And so each week I'm going to read you a quote of something you wrote, which is a unique experience as well. And I'm dating them all so I can keep track of when I'm going to go through the book chronologically as I read it. So this one comes from the preface. It's a couple paragraphs that I think will be a nice official landing to this episode. So here it is. Page 1 of your book. Few experiences prepare you for the first time you pull to the end of the runway. First, you line up the center line and then push the throttle forward. Slowly, your speed accelerates until you find your body pressed back against the seat, and your speed accelerates and your eyes are glued to the runway ahead. You watch your speed, 45 knots, 50, 55 knots, and then suddenly it happens. The beautiful combination of airspeed and wing angle create the lift you need to soar into the sky. It's like magic. We didn't even plan these two things, but it's like literally what you just described. This is great. Okay, then you say this. Leadership, when done well, creates the same sense of awe. Leadership is a unique art that comes from a careful balance of native instinct, self-discipline, and learned skills. When a church, organization, or team is led well, it can soar. Cameron Trimble, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Piloting Church from the preface. Everybody, thank you so much for watching this episode. If you haven't already, click that link in the description below to go access the CPR webinar series and watch the latest video that's up this week. We'll be back next Monday around 10 in the morning to talk more about the church leadership, whatnot, the world around us, and some airplane trivia and lessons along the way. Thank you. We look forward to seeing you then. Until then, keep your seats in the upright position and your tables wherever they're supposed to be.
Put on your own oxygen mask first.
That's right. Put on your own mask first. Cameron, I will talk to you next week. Everyone else, look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.
Bye.